Hey everyone, let's take a quick look at Durumu the Forgotten, the 7th boss in the Throne of Thunder. I should remind you that this is not a guide, but rather just a preview of the encounter. The entire fight takes place on Durumu's circular platform. The fight revolves around using cones of light that come from the boss to reveal and kill otherwise invisible adds. In addition to this, Durumu has several abilities that he casts at your raid. So let's look at how the add mechanics work. 30 seconds after the fight starts, Durumu will trigger the color-blind phase. He will target 3 random raid members, each with a different color beam of light. After this happens, the boss will shine a cone of light on each of these players until the end of the phase. A red cone, a blue cone, and a yellow cone. These cones have the narrowest point on the boss's location in the center of the platform, and they extend outwards until the edge of the platform. Each cone will follow its specific player wherever they move. These cones have several abilities attached to them, which we will discuss, but their most important function is to reveal a number of otherwise invisible and undetectable adds. When the adds have been killed, the phase ends. Around the platform, there are 3 red adds called Crimson Fogs and 1 blue add called Azure Fog. The red cone has the ability to reveal the Crimson Fogs, while the blue cone reveals the Azure Fog. As we have already mentioned, these adds are normally invisible, and while invisible they cannot be damaged in any way. The only way to reveal an add is to shine the appropriately colored light on it. So, for a Crimson Fog to be revealed, the player targeted by the red cone must move to the location of the Crimson Fog so that the light reveals it. The blue cone reveals the Azure Fogs. The yellow cone does not reveal any adds in normal mode, and it is only there to add more strain on your raid. There are yellow adds in heroic mode though. So to quickly recap, to get past this phase of the fight, the red cone must be used to detect the location of all 3 Crimson Fogs and your raid must kill them. There is quite a lot more to this though. Since the adds are stationary, the red cone must remain on the first detected add until it is dead before moving on, and likewise for the second and third adds. Now, if you're thinking that this is a pretty harmless phase and that nothing much damages the raid, that's because we haven't gotten to that part yet. First of all, each of the 3 cones will deal pretty brutal raid-wide damage every 2 seconds if there is no player standing in it aside from the player that the cone is specifically focused on. So, to prevent this from happening, at least 2 players, including the person that the respective cone is being cast on, must be within each cone at all times. Second of all, each cone deals a large amount of damage every 2 seconds, split between the players inside the cone. So you need to have several players standing in each of the 3 cones to keep the damage manageable. Obviously, you don't want to overlap any of the cones, since the players standing there would take way too much damage to survive. So, what do the adds do? Well, considering everything we've talked about so far, the adds themselves don't do very much. To begin with, they are only harmful when they are revealed by a cone, and otherwise it is as if they don't exist. While revealed, the Crimson Fogs deal damage to random raid members through a spell called Crimson Spike. The Azure Fog, while revealed, deals increasing damage to all players standing in the blue cone. The Azure Fog also respawns if killed. Both the Crimson and the Azure Fogs deal a large amount of raid-wide damage if they cease to be revealed, that is to say, if the cone moves from their location before they have been killed. This colorblind phase ends when all 3 Crimson Fogs are dead. This means that your goal for this phase is to find and kill the Crimson Fogs as quickly as possible while making sure that your raid doesn't take more damage than is absolutely necessary. So, make sure that there are several players in each cone, do not overlap the cones, do not stop revealing an add until it is dead, find and kill the Crimson Fogs quickly so that your raid spends as little time as possible during this phase where there is a lot of raid-wide damage. It is best that the Azure Fog remain unrevealed, since that renders it harmless, but because this is not always possible, if the Azure Fog is up, the phase is even more damaging, and getting it over with quickly becomes even more pressing than before. Fortunately, right before the cones appear, for only a second, 3 red circles appear at the locations of the 3 Crimson Fogs. You can see that here. This means that if you are paying attention, you can save a lot of time and just quickly reveal and kill them. So the easiest way to manage this part of the fight seems to be to have whoever has the blue cone stand perfectly still as soon as the cone appears to ensure that the azure fog is never revealed. Then just have the red cone move around to the locations of the crimson fogs and make sure that these are DPS'd and killed promptly. Their health is very low. The yellow cone should just try to move around in such a way as to not overlap with either of the other two cones. Okay, so that's the complicated part. We're not sure how often this colorblind phase repeats itself, but we imagine it must happen with some regularity. Now, let's look at all the other things Durumu does. First of all, he is stationary in the center of the room, and if there is no one in his melee range, he deals raid-wide damage. Second of all, he has an ability called Hard Stare, the purpose of which is to force a tank switch and thus force you to bring more than one tank to the fight. This ability applies two debuffs to the current target, Serious Wound and Arterial Cut. Serious Wound is a stacking healing reduction effect, while Arterial Cut is a bleed that can only be removed by healing the target to full health. Therefore, your tanks need to switch often enough that the player affected by Arterial Cut can be healed to full health. Thirdly, Durumu casts several other abilities. Force of Will creates a narrow cone on the location of a random raid member, and a few seconds later, any players standing within the cone are knocked back. Lingering Gaze targets two random raid members and deals damage to them and anyone within 15 yards, leaving a permanent void zone on the ground at those locations. We assume that the fact that these void zones last until the end of the fight is meant to act as a soft enrage mechanic. Durumu creates a Hungry Eye from time to time, an unattackable NPC which casts Life Drain on a random raid member. We do not have footage of this ability, but here is what it does. The eye drains the life of the targeted player for 15 seconds, healing Durumu for any life it drains. This ability can be intercepted if a player gets between the eye and the target, causing them to be drained instead. This is useful because the eye deals more and more damage the longer it stays on a single target, so by having several players alternate intercepting the beam, the healing received by Durumu is kept at a minimum. Finally, the boss casts an ability called Disintegration Beam. He channels a deadly beam of light in front of him and then slowly turns to the left or right. At the same time, the floor of the room becomes covered in a maze of eye sores. The raid will have to move around Durumu in such a way that the beam channeled in front of him never touches them, all the while respecting the pattern on the floor of the room. Coming into contact with any of these eye sores is quite lethal, as you can see. We never really got past this phase, as testing of the boss was pretty short, so we're not sure how the abilities succeed each other from here on, but these are all the boss's mechanics, and the fight seems like it will just continue like this until the end. We thank you for watching, and hopefully you were able to take away something useful from this preview. We'll be releasing a proper written and video guide once this boss reaches live servers. Remember to subscribe to our channel if you want to be notified of new videos. Bye!